Hello, people. It's me again, Mr. Troublemaker. Again, I'm still a bit obsessed with the subject of proper or appropriate conduct at the workplace, of which many of us have participated. In my case, I guess comments are enough to get you in trouble. But others have done, worse, but it's okay. In today's investigation slash venting, I want to talk about the word adultery or the practice of adultery. I actually kind of looked it up. Again, I'm not an attorney on the case. I'm not an expert on the matter. But I was reading and found out that apparently it's still illegal in the law books, in the law code, to practice such a thing. And it's considered a crime. It's still a crime. It's a minor crime, but it's still a crime. And this is interesting because once again, if it's a crime, I would think government employees should not be committing crimes. No matter how small it might be. I know I read multiple articles. I'm not gonna open them all, and a lot of them said that that some lawgivers are trying to just remove it from the law books because it's first of all they say it's kind of difficult to prove adultery. Which is kind of weird because I think that excuse is very, very cheap, very, I don't know, unintelligent. Because like for example, when a female, gets violated by a man, that's provable. When which obviously that's horrendous. I would not want any woman to go through that. I don't want to say the exact word because YouTube gets triggered. But again, when these bad men, not in general, again that's still a small tiny minority, but society today paints all men as villains when it comes to the subject. But again, when a female is violated by these crazy idiots, they seem to be competent enough to prove the crime. The same thing with other hanky-panky type crimes, like when it comes to abuse of children. Again, I'm trying not to say the word, I don't know why YouTube censors so much. We live in a so-called free country, but they're always censoring words you can't say. Wow, what a free country. Funny thing is, since I was a child, it's been always preached that we fought wars for freedom and the freedom of speech, and we're the freest country in the world. But now YouTube and other entities have proven that to be not so true. But let's continue. But again, other crimes of this nature, of the hanky-panky way, nature, are provable, but all of a sudden we're stupid when it comes to adultery. All of a sudden we're incompetent when it comes to adultery. It's convenient because I read an article that mentioned that there were attorneys and certain judges that agreed that we should get rid of that law. Maybe it's because they are adulterers. Maybe it's because they are part of the pig industry. And obviously it's not convenient for them. At least here in Puerto Rico, a lot of attorneys are known for, especially male, I'm going to be honest, especially male attorneys, they're known for being womanizers or sleeping with the secretary, etc. Just like cops, just like judges, just like political entities, people in power tend to abuse of that. Primarily men, but women as well. Women as well. Let's not just make men villains. But again, going back to the adultery issue, if it's a crime, I'm surprised again how in many workplaces it is acceptable. There was another article that I read. It mentions that there was a debate on justifiableness in terminating or firing employees that were committing adultery. And I remember the article mentioned that the reason was not so much the adultery itself, that entity was not, I mean, the article is right here actually, right in my face. This is the only one, I really want to emphasize. It says, el adulterio como justa causa para el despido, which basically is adultery as a just cause for termination. Now, when I read it, again, this is not necessarily a law, but it's, it's a concern to many workplaces. Why? I mentioned it before, but I think I removed those videos. I mentioned it briefly before because it affects morale at the workplace. It affects people being able to work together. It affects the quality of the workplace because once again, if you, for example, if you committed adultery, or just slept, let's just call it that. If you're sleeping with coworkers, all of a sudden, you stop that relationship and now you have to work with that person. You have to go out on the field, for example, or you have to do anything inventory with that person, and you guys broke up or you guys had a bad experience, whatever, that affects the quality of the work. That affects the quality of how now you have to work with this person because the project was assigned to both of you and you have this negative past. And that's the reason, basically, that some companies want to use adultery as a cause of termination. And it's understandable. It's understandable. I remember when I read the article that mentioned it was primarily people in high positions, not just common co-workers. How an executive could be sleeping with a female at a lower level, and the husband of that female works there in another department, and how it affects him, how he found out that his wife was sleeping with a big executive, and again, the friction, the bad taste that of knowing this big guy is banging my wife, and now that we've separated or we're we're getting divorced, now coming to work is hell for me. Some of my coworkers make fun of me. Who knows who else has probably been doing that to my wife, while we're so-called friends. So again, the level of toxicity here, according to, again, LexisJuris.com and, the justification of firing somebody for this, it's horrendous. I mean, it really is horrendous. And it's funny because at the U.S. Probation, for example, probation officers cannot have a relationship with clients. That's banned. There's a policy against that, and you get fired for that. Why? Let me get it back. Why? Well, I mean, it's obvious. It's not good, And if it's not good, for a probation officer to have an affair with a client, because, obviously conflicts of interest, toxicity, I mean, anything. Well, the same thing should apply with coworkers. Again, the same exact thing, the same exact reasons should apply with coworkers. It could even lead to stealing, husband and wife, or, gay partners or whatever, or just dating. That can lead for some kind of fraud, because now you have somebody that you have, trust, intimately trust, at a unique level. Now you can actually steal or manipulate, or I don't know. Which at the same time, once that relationship breaks, there's friction. And what if that person sleeps with another, and then another, and then another, and then that other, both of them start sleeping around, and it becomes a whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing, like I've mentioned before. Very toxic, and people not wanting to work with each other, but they don't say it. People, I mean, this can even lead to violence, and even, I don't want to say it, but even, one person hurting them to the point that they end up in the cemetery. Again, I don't want to say the words because, we live in a free country and YouTube bans freedom of speech. I mean, that's how toxic things can get, really. I mean, it's horrendous. And then, obviously, like I've mentioned a billion times, like a broken record, if the female, not the guy, because the guy's words don't matter, but if the female all of a sudden decides, hey, that's harassment, he's out of a job, it's just stupid. So again, even though it's considered a dead law, it's still in the books, it's still a crime, but I'm surprised that federal employees partake in this very, very, very heavily. Simply because it's hard to prove. That's why it hasn't been removed from the books. But other crimes of the sexual nature have been provable, and again, nobody's trying to remove those laws. Not only that, going back to the workplace, to my previous workplace, we're supposed to, or they're supposed to be a moral example for society. So again, I don't know, it's just not, it makes no sense. It makes no sense that they permit that openly, knowingly, and nobody necessarily gets in trouble, Obviously, to mitigate the problem, they don't have them work in the same department, at least, but sometimes they will have to work together, on specific cases or situations. But again, it's strange. I read another article where it mentioned that adultery, and again, it's funny because everything is pro women. I guess like they keep saying the future is female. They say that adultery is misogynist, to point the finger and say, hey, this person committed adultery. But and it's weird because they mention misogyny if a woman committed adultery. But why don't they say misandrist when a man commits adultery? You see, do you see the double standard here? Basically, a man is just a pig when he does it. But when a female commits adultery, it's misandrist. And that's what the article said. But again, I'm not going to... You guys can look it up yourself. It was in Spanish, so... But I'm pretty sure there might be some in English as well. And, I think what saddens me the most of this whole ordeal, to be honest, is that a lot of these people consider themselves God-fearing people. They consider themselves Christians. Some, obviously, may have a Jewish background or an Islamic background. But still, if you believe in God, you should not even be entertaining this game of adultery. Look, I can give you names, and I won't. I'm not going to do that, not with adultery here. I know I created a video, which I removed, where I mentioned, what if their spouses ever found out? Because there's so much adultery that I've seen through the years at U.S. Probation of Puerto Rico. And I've heard, of U.S. District Court, I have to say heard because I usually focus more on probation. But there's so many cases. And a lot of these people right now are managers, A lot of these people are in high places. They were eventually, I guess, rewarded for their good example, for their good, for their good performance. Again, what really bites me the hardest, no pun intended here. What really bites me the hardest is that in my case, I was terminated for comments, pure comments, not for doing that. not for doing, not for committing adultery. And I know that in one of my jokes in my comments, I made it sound like like I wanted something with Chula, but no, that's not the case at all. It was a joke. It was a joke. Like I said before, yeah, it was a 9-year-old type immature joke of mine, but still, they're just comments. In any case, if it were true, whose business is it for human resources to interfere? Where were they all these years? All these years, where was human resources? When many people there committed adultery and are still committing adultery or are sleeping around. Where are they? Again, I know comments could be misinterpreted, or jokes could be misinterpreted, but I was never even asked, what did you mean by these comments? Comment per comment. I was never asked that. And during my appeal, just stick to yourself, and you can't say much more. In other words, all these facts, all these truths that I've seen through the years are irrelevant. Obviously, since a lot of them probably practiced it or were practicing it, I guess my comments may have offended them themselves. I don't know. Maybe it offended the judge personally. Maybe it offended some HR members personally. You know what I mean? Again, maybe, I don't know. But the point is, again, it's illegal. It's still illegal. It's still in the books. It's considered a minor crime, but it's still a crime. Yet these crimes are being committed by federal employees here in San Juan, Puerto Rico, at a very gross level. Because I'm aware. I'm aware by again, I know their names. I know who they are. I love them, but at the same time, you know what? Facts and love don't necessarily always combine. And facts don't care about feelings. I remember hearing that once. So once again, it's interesting. It's the moral example of U.S. probation and U.S. District Court of Puerto Rico is horrendous. There's no real consistency. If a woman commits it, it's misogyny. If a man commits it, he's just a pig. Again, double standard. It's ignorance, really. I mean, we call it double standards, but it's really more ignorance than anything else. And HR, well, there's plenty of ignorance at HR. But again, it's just amazing to me that my comments are enough to get me terminated. Comments on particularly that type of behavior when I mentioned these women being she devils, and my joke, that because I remember I mentioned I should delete this before my wife sees it. But again, it's just a joke. I tell my wife these things, and of course she punches me on the on the arm. But no big deal. Yet, if you're an adulterer, yeah, you can work here. On the contrary, you eventually you might end up being a supervisor. And you know what? That one thing I wanted to add here. Somebody told me something about my boss, Julio, about, again, and I mentioned it before. I'm not gonna enter into detail, but it has to do something in this subject. It is more gossip than anything else, so I'm not gonna enter into detail. But somebody told me something. Actually, not too long ago, maybe like 5-6 months ago. Somebody that has been there a while. Somebody that has been there since he has been there. And that person told me he should not have been part of that because he's not a good example of it. That's what, in essence, that person told me. So again, Julio, if you're listening, again, he without sin cast the first stone. I'm using your own words here. Your own words. Not that you've said them, but your own words in the sense that I'm pretty sure you're Catholic or Protestant. And these are religious words from your own holy books. So again, like I said before, it's illegal. It's a crime. It's highly practiced at U.S. District Court of Puerto Rico and probation. Nothing's ever done about it. But comments are worst. Again, I'm referring to me because right now I am a broken record. What I did was worse. Yeah, commenting about that, joking about that is worse than the actual act of sleeping around, which again is disturbing. And don't get offended, people. Because here's a huge contradiction here. And I'm going to emphasize it. Sometimes people get offended by my comments. Like the gay group that wanted to have my video removed. They successfully did it. But guess what? You guys hate Christians. You guys are anti-religion, and you guys are disgusting at that, because if we can't comment something about you, you should not be able to comment something about Christians. But it's weird how a lot of people, especially women, they get offended by these comments of mine. That's my wife sending me a message. She's coming back from Florida soon. But the point is, a lot of people get offended by my comments, but you don't get offended when you spread your legs to just any guy. That's when you should get offended. That's when you should feel uncomfortable. That's when you should feel bad. Again, don't get offended by facts. Get offended when you spread your legs to just any dog so that he can eat at you. And sadly, sometimes when you're married or in another relationship, or just passing yourself around like those women that sell themselves in the streets. See, that's when you should be offended. That's when you should be offended. Not by words, but by your own disgusting acts and behavior. Yes, this is very common at U.S. District Court and probation. I worked there for 13 years, and I can confirm it. You guys can confirm it. HR knows this because, again, Agnes and Evelyn talked about that. This is something Evelyn told me. I've mentioned that in previous videos. So once again, adultery is illegal by the books. Of course, they're not going to take it serious because most of these people that have to promote morality are probably part of the problem. They're probably adulterers themselves or people that sleep around themselves. So why would somebody condemn themselves through others? Well, again, that's just more food for thought, more of my investigation and my analysis of a toxic, satanic workplace. That's it for now.